Hey guys, Justin from the future here, and real quick, the video you're about to see was actually filmed about a week ago. We were about to post it, and of course, just this morning, Ram drops a bombshell on us. They officially announced that for the 2025 model year, the 5.7 Hemi V8 is no longer going to be an option. In its place, they are offering the 3-liter inline-6 Hurricane. Boy, I don't know how to feel about that. You know, I guess we expected the Hurricane to be a Ram option in the future, but I just wasn't really ready for the V8 to be completely pulled out from under us. So let me know what you guys think. Are you excited about the inline 6, or are you dreading the lack of a V8 option? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and enjoy the video. Welcome back to Truck Central. Mr. Justin Wheeler here in the 2019 Ram 1500 Limited High Mileage Edition. It's getting up there. It really is. Earlier this year, we rolled out with a video where we were comparing the differences between the 5.7 liter Hemi that this truck has and the Eco Diesel, the diesel variant that you can get in the 5th gen and even the 4th gen Rams. One of the most frequent comments we got on that video was, what about the V6? So I figured today would be a good time to talk about what's good about the V6, what's bad about it, and then kind of just tell you where I'm at from my perspective. Obviously, I chose the V8, but if I could go back now, would I stick with the 5.7 Hemi, or would I consider the 3.6 liter Pentastar? Before we get into that, I do want to say thank you to Real Truck. They are the sponsor this season for Truck Central. So after the video, click the link in the description and buy yourself something nice. Alright, so we're going to go over this stuff in no particular order, but do stick around to the end because I do want to touch on one potential consideration between the two that a lot of people don't think about when they're selecting their powertrain of choice. Speaking of powertrain, we'll just kick it off there. Power, that's the big one. The 5.7 Hemi has 395 horsepower, 410 foot-pounds of torque, while the 3.6 liter V6, it's got something like 305 horsepower and 269 foot-pounds of torque. For anybody who's good at math, that's about 30% more horsepower and 52% more foot-pounds of torque going with the Hemi. Now, those numbers may mean nothing to some of you, but to put it into perspective, when you need a truck to do truck things, that's where the Hemi steps in. From acceleration to towing to just overall drivability when you're entering the highway, the Hemi is what makes the difference between having to cram your brake to let someone get in front of you so you can merge, or when you could just slam on the gas and blow their doors off. That's the difference. So everyone has a different driving style. You might be happy with the V6. There's nothing wrong with it. I guess that put a little bit of a negative connotation to the V6. I have nothing against it. I'm just saying it doesn't have the get up and go. It has significantly less power, significantly less acceleration. That's just the way it is. But the happy byproduct of less power is obviously better fuel economy. I think the official EPA ratings on the 3.6 is somewhere in the mid to upper 20s highway and the upper teens for the city. And I think that the 5.7, I don't even remember what the 5.7 is supposed to get. Combined, it's in the upper teens. And that's about what I get. But, you know, I've known a few people who've had the 3.6. I've heard about its actual miles per gallon, and most people say that you're only going to get a couple miles per gallon better in the V6 versus the Hemi. Now, that's going to vary significantly based on how you drive. I know. Just take into consideration, it is better. Your fuel economy is absolutely better, but it's not like night and day different. Now, one thing to consider about the fuel economy is that the V6 is rated to run on 87 octane, where the Hemi, you're supposed to use 89 octane or above. if you've watched any of my videos, you know I do not use 89 octane ever. 87 almost exclusively. The only time we did 89 octane in this truck was whenever we did that comprehensive fuel analysis video. And honestly, I think I'm going to go back to that. We'll probably make another video talking about not just a fuel economy analysis, but more so what does 87 octane do to the 5.7 Hemi? What have my results been? And we can kind of just dive into the 87, because I think anybody who doesn't get 89 or above, they're probably going to get 87. So we'll revisit that in another video. So all this talk about fuel economy, that really segues nicely into cost. What is the cost difference? Well, there's a couple different ways to look at it, and there's a few buckets that they fall in. The first thing is your upfront cost, the difference when you go buy this. If you go to Ram's website today and you build a truck, if you want the Hemi over the 3.6 liter Pentastar, you're going to pay $2,995 more for the V8. That's your upfront. That's your fixed cost. That's what we all have to pay extra to have the Hemi. All right. Then there are the unfixed costs, the costs that are going to, the variable costs is what I'm trying to say, that are going to change from person to person and from situation to situation. Those things are fuel costs, R&M costs, and one that you probably don't think about, and it's not necessarily required, that's your rear axle ratio upgrade. So if you were to try to save a little bit of money to get the smaller motor and a more fuel efficient motor, you probably should shell out the extra $145 for better gearing in the rear. All right, so repair and maintenance. Let's just talk about oil changes. The 3.6 liter needs 6 quarts of oil. The Hemi takes 7 quarts of oil. I've had 21 oil changes on this truck so far. That extra quart per change at $10 per quart, which might be a little low. That's $210. Don't try to tally this up in your head. I'm going to give you the actual total that I've paid. Then there's spark plugs. The V6 has 6 plugs. The V8 has 16 plugs, 2 plugs per cylinder. So if you change the plugs at every 100,000 miles, that's 12 to 32. That's 20 more plugs at $5 per plug. That's $100 more I've paid in plugs than you would have, or than I would have if I went with the V6. All right, so let's talk about the big cost difference, the fuel. And I hesitated to even highlight this one and put a number to it because it is so variable, but just for kicks, just for S and G's, I'm going to tell you what it would be for me. If I'd gone with the V6, I would have saved 1,528 gallons of fuel. If you put an average price of $3 per gallon, and that's probably low, but maybe not, depending on where you live, it's about $4,600 more I paid to drive this truck. So if we add up the extra spark plugs, the extra fuel, the extra oil, the adder, the $29.95 upcharge up front, we subtract a rear axle upgrade, just bear with me, that's $7,760 extra dollars for me to operate this truck as it sits. And I know I like the numbers, and if you don't, then I'm sorry, but I find this interesting. If you break that down, I've had this truck just over 4 years. If you break that down over 4 years, that's $5.31 per day. $5.31. That's kind of how I feel about it. So it's worth it. $5 extra dollars. Is it bad to go with the V6? No, you'll save money. And if money is a real factor to your decision, then I think it's warranted. You could save quite a bit in upfront costs and operating costs just going with that option. Something minor but worth noting, the cylinder deactivation stuff. If you're not familiar with what that is, the Hemis have this deal where in order to save fuel, 2 cylinders deactivate at certain speeds and RPMs, and it conserves fuel. Some people really hate that. Now you can bypass that by toggling some buttons on your steering wheel. You can also bypass it by running a specific tuner. The V6 doesn't have that. So if you like things simple, the V6, it's got that going for it. All right, so let's just mention the driving dynamics a little bit. This kind of is similar to the power thing. But the V6 is a fairly high-strung motor, meaning that its power on the low end is really lackluster. The torque is just not there. It really doesn't get that power until it gets up in the RPM range. And what that results in is, if you're trying to just do some basic maneuvering on the road, you've really got to be high up in the revs to really feel that power. And so at that point, it's kind of delayed, the engine's kind of screaming, and you're really not going that fast. By comparison, the Hemi's not that way. It's got a lot of low-end torque where you don't have that. This thing gets up and goes, no problem, and you feel that with or without the trailer. And even with this truck with the 321 gears, man, this thing scoots just fine. I've never felt like I didn't have enough power and I didn't have it when I needed it. And that's just kind of the muscle truck factor you get when you get the Hemi. When you order the 5.7, you get the Hemi badge on the side. They put it right on the side of the hood. It used to be on the fenders. Everyone loves a Hemi. The Charger guys, the Challenger guys, even if you're not a Mopar fan, everybody loves Hemis.
Hey, that thing got a Hemi?
Yep, it's got a Hemi. And with 200,000 miles.
Sweet.
And this is not that important, but the sound. The sound of a Hemi, it feels like an old school American muscle car, but it's a new school, technology-packed, luxurious, capable off-road work and other things truck. You don't get that with the V6. And if it doesn't go fast enough or sound good enough, the aftermarket support for modifications on this thing, it is plentiful. It's everywhere. They make parts for any and everything that you can imagine. Whereas I haven't seen very many Rams with the V6s with superchargers or ceramic headers or intakes. You know, while there is probably some aftermarket support, there is no way it has any comparison to the Hemi. So speaking of mods, whether you do need an intake or headers or hell, bed covers or side steps, we'll go ahead and leave links to the full list of mods down below in the description. Okay, just a couple more quick things, I promise. And I know it probably sounds like I have V6 bias. I don't. Let me tell you something, my heart belongs to a crusty, melty 4.3 liter V6 in my shop. I don't have anything against them. This is just a straight comparison. So believe me when I say I respect the V6 and anyone who buys one. I'm not one of those guys who, you know, stands on his pedestal, stands on the hill he dies on. I'm not one of those guys. There's value in everything, and there is value to the V6. But for my purposes, for what I do, the V8 is just a better platform. And then finally, let's just talk about the last thing on the list I think that a lot of people don't consider when they choose their powertrain, and that's the depreciation. And depreciation, man, that's going to vary everywhere, but it's not just the straight financial value, the resale value, the private party value, the market demand for what you had. Have you ever been in the middle of a midlife crisis and you're looking at like a 4th gen F-body Camaro and you see that it's got a great price on it marketplace, and come to find out it's got the 3.4 or 3.8 liter V6, and you're like, oh no, pass. I'll wait. I'll pay double for that 5.7, not the Hemi, the LT1 or the LS1. That's what I'm talking about. 5 more years, 10 more years, even today in the private market, you're going to have a lot more market demand for the Hemi than the V6. It's just simple as that. Now, if you go trade it in at a dealer, will they try to tell you that the Hemi's not worth anymore? Will they hassle you? Maybe. It just depends. But if you try to sell it private party, yeah, the Hemi's going to bring more value for sure. So stay tuned. Please subscribe. Just as a reminder, I do have a few little surprises in store for the Ram coming up. And if you do want to see that list of mods, we'll have all the links in the description. So tell me what you think. If Ram discontinued the Hemi today, would you go 6-cylinder Would you go 4-cylinder? EV? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. You know, I look forward to talking to you. And as always, thanks for watching.